They say that hell on earth isn't some distant place. It's in your own home, when you are forced to watch betrayal unfold right before your very eyes. And I understood the depth of that truth on one suffocating summer afternoon. It was when I saw, with my own two eyes, my husband, Ethan, the man I loved with my entire being, carrying on with the young woman next door, Chloe, whom I had always treated like a little sister, right there, in the very backyard I had cultivated with so much care and dedication. But, let me tell you, instead of screaming, instead of making a scene, I silently went back into the house and headed straight for the kitchen. My trembling hands grabbed a bottle of itching powder, the kind that causes an unbearable itch, a relic from my youthful pranks. An icy smile formed on my lips. The most irritating drama of their lives, directed by my own hand, was about to premiere. And secretly, I made a phone call, inviting all the relatives from both our families to enjoy a play they would never forget. That afternoon, the sky was a deep, cloudless blue. I had just gotten back from the gym, still drenched in sweat, but feeling incredibly serene. My plan was to go out to the backyard to cut a few white rosebuds, still covered in dew, to make a beautiful bouquet and surprise Ethan when he got home from work. That garden was my pride and joy. I had transformed a barren patch of land into a small paradise, with all sorts of fragrant flowers and exotic plants. Every tree, every flower bed was infused with my sweat and my love. Holding the watering can, my heart overflowed with joy, humming a tune as I walked. But when I reached the large glass sliding door that led to the garden, I stopped dead in my tracks. A stealthy whisper reached my ears, one that was not the wind or the birds. Curious, I hid behind the curtain and peeked through a crack, and then, the scene that unfolded before me left me paralyzed. The watering can I was holding slipped from my hands, hitting the stone tiles with a sharp, metallic clang that apparently no one heard. My ears were ringing, the blood seemed to stop in my veins. Under the jasmine-covered trellis where I used to sit and read every afternoon, two figures were entwined in a wild frenzy. The long, silky hair of Chloe, my innocent neighbor, was splayed across the lush green lawn that I myself mowed and cared for every single day. The hand of Ethan, my husband, whom I caressed every night, was running down her bare back. The crisp, white shirt I had ironed for him that very morning lay crumpled and abandoned next to an old rose bush. The woman's lustful giggles mixed with the deep, seductive voice of the man I called my husband. They were like thousands of poisoned needles stabbing directly into my bleeding heart. I felt as if someone was squeezing my chest. I couldn't breathe. I grabbed onto the wall, trying not to collapse. I tried to tell myself I had seen it wrong, that it was just a nightmare. But no, it was all too clear, too raw. They didn't even bother to hide, to find a more discreet place. They shamelessly turned my garden, the space I loved most, into the stage for their sordid, clandestine affair. I don't know how long I stood there. Time seemed to stand still. I could only stare at those two people. The initial pain quickly gave way to a sense of disgust and a bone-chilling anger. I had sacrificed everything for that man. I gave up a promising career to be a homemaker so he could focus on his work. I took care of his every need, considered his family my own. And this is what I got in return. A betrayal in my own home, with a girl I had treated like a sister. When their tryst was over, they lazily got dressed. I even heard Chloe's syrupy voice. "Ethan, my love, you spoil me so much, but what if Olivia finds out?" Ethan let out a dismissive laugh, a smile I had never seen on him. He stroked her hair, his voice full of arrogance. "What are you worried about? My wife is so good, so naive, she would never suspect a thing. Just let her keep taking care of this pretty garden so we have a romantic little spot for our dates." That sentence was like the final hammer blow that shattered the last shred of illusion I had left. Good, naive. It turns out that in his eyes, my love and trust were nothing more than stupidity. The last hot tear rolled down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily, not allowing myself to be weak for another second. Enough was enough, truly enough. I turned and walked silently into the kitchen, making no sound. The pain had transformed into a cold determination. "You made me a laughingstock. You trampled on my love and my sacrifice. Fine, I won't scream. I won't make a scene." I will give you a gift so irritating that you will remember it forever. My trembling hands grabbed the bottle of itching powder. I glanced out at the garden and saw their underwear still scattered on the lawn. A bitter but calculating smile played on my lips. For the play that was about to unfold, I needed not just an audience, but the most impartial judges, our families. You have desecrated my garden, so I will turn this very house into the stage to unmask your hypocrisy before the entire clan. How will this tangled story continue? Will Olivia's revenge plan succeed? Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next exciting chapters of this story. I don't know how long I stood motionless in the kitchen. The bottle of itching powder sat on the counter, its bright color seeming to mock my pain. In the garden, Ethan and Chloe's voices had fallen silent. They had surely gone their separate ways, leaving me to clean up the battlefield of their betrayal. Slowly, I sank to the cold kitchen floor, leaning my back against a cabinet. The initial shock wore off, leaving a numbing ache. It spread from my chest throughout my body, making me tremble violently. The tears I had tried to hold back now flowed uncontrollably. I wasn't sobbing loudly, just silent, hot, bitter tears rolling down my cheeks. What did I do wrong? That question echoed in my head. What had I done to deserve such cruel treatment? The memories of 5 years of marriage flashed through my mind like a slow-motion film, sharp in every detail. I remembered the day Ethan proposed. He knelt under the candlelight in a fancy restaurant, a diamond ring in his hand, his eyes full of love. He said, "Olivia, marry me. I can't promise you the most luxurious life, but I promise I will spend the rest of my life loving and protecting you." I believed that promise. I believed it blindly. I thought I was the happiest woman in the world when I said yes. After we married, I fulfilled my duties as a wife. When Ethan started his business, the company went through many difficulties. It was I who, without hesitation, withdrew all my savings and the money my parents gave me, even selling my most valuable jewelry to give him the capital. He held me, his voice choked with emotion. "Thank you, my love. I swear I won't let you down." Then, when his company began to stabilize, he said he needed a wife to manage the household, a solid home front so he could fully dedicate himself to his career. Once again, I didn't hesitate to resign from my position as a lead designer, a job I had fought for many years. I agreed to stay at home, within 4 walls, with endless chores. My friends said I was a fool, that I was sacrificing too much, but I just smiled. I thought my husband's happiness was my own. I was overjoyed when I saw Ethan succeed, when his work was going better and better. I was so proud when I heard people praise his talent, saying he had a competent wife behind him. I took care of his parents when they were sick, as if they were my own. His mother loved my homemade apple pie. I didn't mind the heat. I would go to every farmer's market to find the best organic ingredients to bake it for her. His father was a collector of rare bourbons. I spent time researching, learning, and buying him valuable bottles to make him happy. I did all of that without a single complaint, hoping only for a little respect, a little love. But what did I receive today in return? The disgusting scene in my own garden, his dismissive words. My wife is so good, so naive. The more I thought, the more my heart twisted, the pain turning into outrage. I was too stupid, too blind. I had become an unpaid maid, an ATM, and nothing more. And Chloe, that girl, I treated her so well. I saw she was lonely and struggling, and I treated her like a little sister. I lent her money when she said her family had an emergency. I introduced her to a few minor work contacts. I even comforted her when I saw her looking sad, and she repaid me by sleeping with my husband in my own house. The shamelessness and lack of morals of those 2 people made me sick. I couldn't just sit here and cry. Crying solves nothing. My tears are not worth shedding for people who are not worth it. They have looked down on me. They have trampled on my love and my sacrifice. Fine, I will show them just how fearsome this good, naive woman can become when cornered. I wiped my tears forcefully. The weakness vanished, replaced by a sharp gaze and a steely determination. I got up, went to the dining table, and poured myself a glass of water. I drank it in one gulp, the coldness helping to calm me down. I looked again at the bottle of itching powder on the counter. The initial idea was just an impulsive reaction, but now it had become a meticulously calculated plan. Sprinkling the powder wasn't enough. That would only be the appetizer. I needed a more substantial main course, a bigger stage for everyone to admire the true faces of those two liars. Family, friends, colleagues, and especially our parents. I wanted them to pay a heavy price. Not just physical pain, but also humiliation and disgrace. They had made me a fool in the dark. Fine. I will drag them into the light for the whole world to see their filth. I picked up my phone, opened my contacts, and my fingers slid down the list until they stopped on a name: mother-in-law. Another icy smile appeared on my lips. My play would begin with this woman. I would turn the one who was always so proud of her golden boy into the first person to pull back the curtain on his disgusting secret. The plan was laid out, step by step. They would never imagine that in a single afternoon, the wife they despised had completely transformed. The storm was just beginning, and the eye of the hurricane would be the family party I was about to direct. Once the decision was made, I didn't allow myself another second of weakness. The first thing I had to do was erase all traces of disarray. I picked up the pieces of the broken watering can, wiped the water from the floor. I went out into the garden and collected Ethan's crumpled shirt, Chloe's dress, and their underwear scattered on the lawn. Holding those things in my hands, I no longer felt disgust, but a strange calm. I put everything in the washing machine, washed it, dried it, and folded it neatly, placing it in Ethan's closet as if nothing had happened. I had to act, to play the role of a wife who knows nothing. Only then could I make those two completely lower their guard and fall step by step into the trap I had set for them. That evening, Ethan came home from work with a bouquet of red roses in his hand. He smiled, handing me the flowers. "For you, my love. I closed a big deal today. I have my solid home front to thank for it. If it had been the Olivia of yesterday, I would probably have cried with joy. But now, looking at that beautiful bouquet, it only seemed fake and ridiculous to me." I accepted the flowers, forcing a happy smile. "Thank you, honey. You've worked so hard. Go wash up and come to dinner. I've made all your favorite dishes." Dinner proceeded in an atmosphere that, to an outsider, would seem incredibly warm. I constantly served Ethan food, asked him about his work. He also acted like an exemplary husband, telling me funny stories from the office, looking at me from time to time with a falsely affectionate gaze. Watching him act only made me feel pity. Was he trying to compensate for his guilt with these empty gestures? Did he think a bouquet of flowers and a few sweet words could erase his disgusting betrayal? During dinner, I delicately brought up the subject. "Honey, your work has been going so well lately. I'm so happy for you. How about we throw a little party at home this weekend? We can invite our parents and some close relatives to celebrate. We haven't had a get-together in a long time. It could be to celebrate your promotion and also a chance for me to officially get to know your family better. Ever since we got married, I haven't really had the chance." Hearing me, Ethan's eyes lit up. The idea seemed to please him. A family party would be the perfect opportunity for him to show off as a successful man with a happy family and a doting wife. It would dispel any rumors and reinforce his perfect image. "What a great idea, my love. I was just thinking about telling you the same thing. Let's do it. You take care of everything. You have my full support," he said, patting my hand. I smiled, a victorious smile. The fish had taken the bait. "Great. I'll call your mom tomorrow to discuss the details with her. She's older, she has experience. I'm sure she'll give me good advice," I said, deliberately elevating my mother-in-law's role. I knew that for Ethan, his mother was number one. Winning her over was the key to having complete control over everything. The next morning, I called my mother-in-law. I laid out my idea for the party, of course, with a very humble and solicitous tone. "Mom, it's Olivia. Ethan and I were thinking of having a little party at home this weekend to celebrate his promotion. I'm calling to ask for your opinion. Who do you think we should invite? And the menu? I'm young. I don't have experience. I need you to guide me." My mother-in-law, a woman who always liked to exert her authority and put on airs. Hearing me, she was flattered. She cleared her throat and began to lecture. "Well, It's good that you're thinking this way. You should have done this a long time ago. Let's see. You have to invite all the aunts and uncles from the paternal side and the maternal side, too. No one can be left out. And your great-uncle from Florida," she went on, reciting an endless list. Exactly the relatives I knew were the most critical and gossipy. I just nodded, pretending to listen attentively, taking notes. "And as for the menu," she continued, "it has to be something grand. We need a raw bar with oysters and shrimp, prime rib, a proper catered affair to impress everyone. Money is no object. Tell Ethan to take care of it." I listened to her and inwardly laughed. She wanted a lavish banquet to show off, but she wanted her son to pay for it. And Ethan's money? Wasn't it also my money? "Yes, Mom, I'll keep that in mind. Don't worry, I'll prepare everything perfectly," I replied, my voice still sweet as honey. But I didn't stop at planning the party. I had to take another important step: get closer to Chloe. I needed to have her under control, so she wouldn't suspect anything or ruin my plan. That afternoon, I went to the farmer's market at the time I knew Chloe usually went. I ran into her by chance at the vegetable stall. "Hey, Chloe, you're here too?" I greeted her with a big smile. Seeing me, she was a little startled, but she quickly composed herself. "Hi, Olivia." "Yeah, just grabbing something for dinner. What a coincidence. Me too. Are you eating alone?" "Yes, it's a bit boring alone," Chloe sighed, looking lonely. "Well, come over for dinner tonight. I cooked a lot of good food," I offered. Chloe hesitated a bit, but then she nodded. That night, she came for dinner. I deliberately prepared her favorite dishes, treated her with great affection. During dinner, I told her about my plans for the weekend party. "It's a shame. It's just family and older folks that day. It wouldn't be right to invite you. Otherwise, we could have chatted," I said, feigning regret. Chloe just smiled. "Don't worry. I'm glad you're having a party." She had no idea that, although she wasn't invited, she would be one of the main attractions. After dinner, I even packed some fruit for her to take home. Before she left, I hugged her and patted her on the back. "If you feel lonely, come see me, okay? That's what friends are for." Chloe was moved, her eyes watery. "You're so good to me, Olivia. Thank you so much." Watching her walk away, I gave a faint smile. "Good? You'll see just how good I can be." My play was perfectly set. The two traitors were in the palm of my hand, intoxicated by the false sweetness I offered them. They didn't know that a deadly trap was slowly closing in around them. The following days, I lived with two faces. At home, I was the exemplary wife and daughter-in-law, busy preparing for the big family party. I went to the most exclusive grocery stores, personally selecting the freshest ingredients. Lobsters, fresh shrimp, the best cuts of beef. I bought everything without hesitation. Ethan, seeing my expenses, seemed a little concerned, but when I told him it was so he and his parents would look good in front of the family, he nodded with satisfaction. He even gave me his credit card, telling me, "Buy the best, don't hold back." I took the card, feeling only contempt. He was willing to spend a fortune on an ostentatious party to polish his image, not knowing that this very party would be the grave of his honor. I not only prepared the food, I also decorated the house meticulously. I placed a vase of fragrant lilies in the living room, changed the curtains, cleaned every corner until it shone. I wanted my stage to be perfect. Meanwhile, I maintained my friendship with Chloe. I texted her often, asking how she was, and occasionally I would casually complain, "Preparing for this party is exhausting. I have to take care of everything, from A to Z, with no help from anyone." Chloe, hearing this, was sympathetic and comforted me. She didn't know that my fake exhaustion was part of the plan to make her think I was too busy to pay attention to other things. And then came the crucial moment. It was a Thursday afternoon, 2 days before the party. I knew that, by habit, that was the day Chloe would hang her underwear out to dry on her balcony. She lived alone, so she was quite careless. Her balcony directly faced my backyard, very easy to observe. I had been studying her routine all week. As for Ethan, I knew he always had a spare set of underwear hidden in the bottom drawer of his dresser, just in case he had a rendezvous somewhere and it wasn't convenient for him to come home. It took me quite a while to discover that secret. I waited until around noon, when the sun was high, making sure the clothes were dry. Under the pretext of pruning the plants, I went out into the garden. The garden was no longer my peaceful haven. It was a crime scene, an obsession. But today, I went out with a completely different mindset. There was no more pain, only a cold determination. I looked up at Chloe's balcony. As expected, her seductive black lace lingerie set was hanging on the line, swaying in the wind like a provocation. Calmly, I went to the utility shed and took out a very long clothes-retrieving pole. My heart beat a little faster, not out of fear, but out of excitement. I went back to the garden, positioned myself in a hidden corner where the neighborhood security cameras couldn't reach me. Carefully, I used the pole to skillfully unhook Chloe's set. Everything went better than I expected. With the proof of betrayal in my hands, I went straight to the downstairs powder room. I put on rubber gloves and opened the bottle of itching powder. The characteristic smell hit my nose, making me sneeze. But I didn't stop. I meticulously sprinkled a thick layer of powder on the inside of Chloe's bra and panties, especially in the most sensitive areas. I did it carefully, with a steady hand, like an artist completing their masterpiece. Every particle of powder clung to the lace, looking like a lethal decoration. Finished with Chloe's clothes, I stealthily went up to the master bedroom. Ethan hadn't come home from work yet. I opened the bottom drawer and took out his secret underwear. I did the same, not missing a single millimeter. Contemplating my two creations, I smiled with satisfaction. The irritating gift was ready. The last step was to return everything to its place. I used the pole again to carefully hang Chloe's set back on the line. It looked exactly the same as before, with no sign of having undergone a terrible treatment. As for Ethan's set, I put it back in the drawer, as neat as if no one had touched it. I took off the gloves, washed my hands thoroughly with soap several times, erasing any trace. Everything was done. That afternoon, from time to time, I glanced towards Chloe's balcony, waiting. Around 4 p.m, I saw her come out to collect her laundry. She took her underwear, without the slightest suspicion, and brought it inside. I felt an indescribable satisfaction. The trap was set, the poison applied. Now I just had to wait for the prey to fall. I imagined the scene to come, the pain and agony those two were about to suffer, and I didn't feel a shred of guilt. You reap what you sow. And this storm would not only be irritating, but also incredibly humiliating. I wondered if they would have the strength to endure it, or if they would expose themselves in front of everyone. The best act of the play was yet to come. After completing the preparation, my mood became strangely calm. I no longer felt anger or pain. Instead, there was a cold anticipation, like a hunter who has set a trap and patiently waits for their prey to fall. Friday, the day before the party, passed slowly. I spent the whole day on the final preparations. I called the caterer to confirm the delivery time. I personally prepared some elaborate desserts, the ones Ethan used to love. I did everything mechanically. My mind was no longer there. It was flying towards the next day, towards that fateful party. Ethan came home quite early, looking tired but also excited. He hugged me, inhaling the aroma of freshly baked pastries coming from the kitchen. What a diligent wife I have. How are the preparations going? Almost everything is ready, honey. Tomorrow is just the cooking, I replied, in my usual soft voice. He didn't notice anything strange about me. In his eyes, I was still the good, docile wife, dedicated to the kitchen. That night, I began the most important task, sending the invitations. Of course, they were not ordinary invitations. I had drafted a formal text message and sent it to each person on the list my mother-in-law had given me. Dear aunts, uncles, cousins, etc., we would like to invite you to celebrate with us this weekend at our home. We've had a small success at work and want to share it with the family over an intimate meal. I sent the message to all of Ethan's relatives, both paternal and maternal. I didn't leave anyone out, especially the figures of authority and weight in the family, like the eldest uncle or the great aunt. I knew that the more important people were present, the greater Ethan's humiliation would be. But my main goal was not just that. I needed a more special audience, I searched my contacts for Chloe's parents' number. I had gotten it once when she left her phone at my house. Under the pretext of being her best friend, I saved the number just in case. And now was the time. I drafted another message, with a kind and respectful tone. "Good afternoon. This is Olivia, a good friend of Chloe's here in the city. This weekend I'm hosting a small party at my house. I know you don't often come up, so I'm taking this opportunity to invite you to come and, while you're at it, surprise Chloe. She's been a bit lonely lately and would surely love to see you. Don't worry about travel or accommodation expenses. It's all on me." I knew that with such a sincere and attractive invitation, they would hardly refuse. A free trip to the city and a party at a luxury house was a unique opportunity. And, as I predicted, just 15 minutes later, Chloe's mother called me back, her voice full of joy, thanking me profusely and accepting immediately. I hung up the phone with a satisfied smile. My stage now had all the important actors. The trader's family, the mistress's family, and a large gathering of relatives would be the most impartial judges. I didn't just invite the family. I also accidentally dropped information about the party to a couple of journalist friends. I only hinted that this weekend there was a big party at my house to celebrate my husband's promotion and that important business figures would be attending. With the press's nose for news, I knew they wouldn't pass up the opportunity to get exclusive stories or new connections. That night, I lay in bed next to Ethan, who was sleeping soundly. He had no idea that the woman beside him had woven a web from which neither he nor his little mistress could escape. I couldn't sleep. In my head, I visualized the next day's scene. I imagined my mother-in-law's face when she saw her golden boy humiliated. I imagined Chloe's parents' faces when they discovered that their good, obedient daughter was the other woman destroying a family. And I imagined the faces of Ethan and Chloe when the physical pain and moral humiliation hit them at the same time. Thinking about it, I felt no glee, but an icy void. I once loved this man. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him, but he himself had destroyed it all. I didn't want this war. But once it started, I had to be the victor. Tomorrow it would all be over. Either I would reclaim my honor, or I would sink with them to the bottom of ignominy. But I was confident that divine justice existed. Those who do wrong, sooner or later, pay for it. Saturday morning, the day of the party. I woke up very early. The sky was still dark, but I wasn't sleepy. I went out to the backyard, took a deep breath of the fresh morning air. The garden was still beautiful, the roses shyly showing their colors, the jasmine still giving off its fragrance, but in my eyes, it was no longer a peaceful paradise. It was a silent witness to betrayal. Calmly, I cut the most beautiful flowers, put them in a luxurious crystal vase, and placed it in the center of the living room. The stage had to be perfect, down to the smallest detail. Around 8, Ethan woke up. Yawning, he came down to the kitchen and found me preparing a hearty breakfast. "Wow, you're up early today, my love," he said, his voice sleepy. "Today is an important day, honey. I had to get up early to prepare everything," I replied with a smile. My smile must have been so radiant that it surprised him a little. But he didn't think much of it, and sat down to eat his breakfast with gusto. "Hey, honey," he said while eating. "I checked the joint savings account yesterday and saw that a considerable amount was missing. Did you take out money for something?" His question made my hand, which was holding a glass of milk, pause for a moment. I knew that sooner or later he would ask. $50,000 was the amount I had secretly withdrawn a few days earlier to prepare for my new life. After it was all over, I had transferred it to a secret account that only I knew about. I looked up and met his eyes directly, with an expression of complete innocence. "Oh yes, I took out a little to organize the party. Mom said it had to be grand, with expensive dishes, and I was worried I wouldn't have enough. Besides, I thought if there was anything left over, we could use it to trade in our car. Ours is getting a bit old." I had this answer prepared. It was logical and, at the same time, appealed to Ethan's ego and desire for show. Indeed, upon hearing about the new car, his face immediately relaxed. He laughed. "That's very thoughtful, my love. Yes, let's do it. Now that I've been promoted, we should have a car to match. Leave it all to me." He suspected nothing, even encouraged me to spend. I sighed in relief inwardly. The first step had gone well. But this conversation, unintentionally, opened a new line of investigation for me: the joint savings account. I suddenly remembered, where had I put it after taking out the money? I used to keep important papers in the small safe in the study. After Ethan left for work, I went up to the study and opened the safe. The savings account statement was still there, but next to it, I saw a strange folder. I had never seen it before. Curious, I picked it up. It was an investment partnership agreement. Partner A was my husband, Ethan Hayes, but Partner B. That name stunned me. Chloe Soto. It was Chloe, my neighbor. I turned the pages, trembling. The contract specified that Ethan would contribute a capital of $100,000 to open a luxury boutique with Chloe. The address of the store was also clearly indicated on one of the busiest streets in the city center. The date of signing was 3 months ago. $100,000. That figure was like a hammer blow to my head. Where did that money come from? Our joint account, at its peak, barely exceeded $50,000, which was all my savings. Where did he get $100,000? Did he have another secret fund I didn't know about? I got to the last page, where the signatures of both parties were. And then, a small detail made me freeze. Below Ethan's signature, in the account information for the transfer, was the account number of an unknown bank, an account I had never heard him mention. But the most terrible thing was that the account was in the names of 2 people, Ethan Hayes and Olivia Miller. Me. My blood ran cold. He had forged my signature. He had opened another joint account without my knowledge, and he had used that account for his shady business. Quickly, I called a friend who worked at a bank. I asked her to check the information for that account. 10 minutes later, she called me back, her voice worried. "Olivia, it's true. There is an account in both your names. It was opened almost a year ago, and—" She hesitated. "And what else? Tell me," I urged her. "And 3 months ago, a home equity loan of $100,000 was granted to that account. The collateral for the loan is the house you live in. Our house. The house that I had decorated and cared for with such dedication. He had dared to take out a second mortgage on it to give the money to his mistress to open a store. And I, the co-owner, knew absolutely nothing about it. How had he managed to deceive the bank? My signature, the house deeds. Fraud. This was no longer a simple infidelity, a sentimental betrayal. This was a crime of fraud and embezzlement. The anger inside me reached its peak. I had underestimated the cruelty and cunning of this man. He had not only betrayed me, but he was conspiring to take everything that was mine. He was leaving me with nothing. I sank into the chair, clutching the contract tightly. "Fine, Ethan, fine. You yourself have provided me with another irrefutable piece of evidence. Tonight's party will not only have an irritating gift, I will give you and your mistress another surprise gift. A legal gift, enough to ruin your lives." Things had gone too far. There was no turning back. The shock of the contract and the mortgage took me several minutes to calm down. This betrayal was more painful than catching them in the act. It proved that Ethan was not just a man who succumbed to temptation, but someone who had been plotting and calculating for a long time. He had planned to strip me of my assets, preparing an exit with his mistress. Probably, in his plan, after having the boutique and his own business, he would find a way to kick me out of the house. Thinking about this, a chill ran down my spine. I was about to be left with nothing, to be thrown out of my own home without knowing it. The hatred inside me grew stronger than ever. I could no longer fight this battle alone. I needed an ally, someone who could help me not only morally, but also with things I couldn't do alone. I immediately thought of Tristan, Ethan's cousin. Tristan was the son of Ethan's youngest aunt. He came from a small town to the city for college and stayed to work. He was a good, honest guy, but somewhat shy. His family back home was not wealthy, so he was never highly valued in the family. Whenever they went back to their hometown, my mother-in-law and the other aunts would often compare him to Ethan, criticizing him for not being sharp, for lacking ambition. Ethan, although he was his cousin, barely paid him any attention. He saw him as a country cousin, someone he only turned to for minor favors. Only I, perhaps out of empathy for his situation, always treated him well. From time to time, I would give him some money, buy him new clothes, or invite him over for a meal. I knew that Tristan appreciated me, but he was also very afraid of Ethan's family. Would he dare to help me? I hesitated for a moment, but decided I had to try. I had no other options. I called Tristan and arranged to meet him at a quiet coffee shop. Tristan arrived promptly, looking surprised and worried. "Olivia, did you call me for something urgent? Your voice sounded strange. I didn't beat around the bush. I got straight to the point." "Tristan, I have something very important to ask of you, but before I tell you, you have to promise me you'll keep it a secret." Tristan nodded immediately. "Of course, Olivia. Anything. You've helped me so much. I'll never forget it." I took a deep breath and began to tell him. I didn't tell him about the infidelity. I knew Tristan was young, and that might put him in an uncomfortable position. I focused on the financial aspect. I showed him the partnership agreement and told him about the mortgage on the house. I told him that Ethan had deceived me, that he planned to steal my assets. I needed a witness, someone who could confirm Ethan's shady actions in front of the whole family at the party that night. As he listened, Tristan turned pale. He was stunned, unable to believe that his cousin, whom he had always looked up to, was capable of such a thing. He was silent for a long time, a conflicted expression on his face. I knew he was scared. Facing the whole clan, especially my mother-in-law, was not easy. "I know I'm asking a lot of you," I said, my voice somewhat subdued. "If you don't want to, I won't blame you. I'll manage on my own." Tristan looked up and met my eyes directly. His usual shy gaze had become strangely firm. "No, Olivia," he said with a determined voice. "I'll help you. I've had enough of their condescension for too long. Ethan, he's never considered me his cousin. That family only cares about money and appearances. You're the only person in that house who has treated me well. I can't let them continue to take advantage of you." I didn't expect Tristan to agree so resoundingly. I felt immense gratitude. "Thank you, Tristan. I'll never forget this." "Don't say that," Tristan said. "Tell me, what do I need to do?" I began to explain my plan. "Tonight, at the party, after everything is revealed, I just need you to stand up and be my witness. Tell them about the times Ethan asked you to run shady errands, the times he boasted about how he was fooling me. Do you remember that time he asked you to photocopy some documents for a bank loan? Do you still have any copies?" Tristan nodded. "Yes, I remember. It seemed strange, so I secretly made a copy. I still have it at my apartment." "Perfect," I exclaimed. "That will be irrefutable proof. Tonight, come to the party as if nothing is wrong. Act normally. At the right moment, I'll give you a signal." "Understood. Don't worry," Tristan replied, his eyes full of determination. With Tristan as an ally, my plan was much more solid. I no longer felt alone. That afternoon, everything was ready. The fresh seafood had arrived. The vintage wine was chilling. The house, splendidly decorated, was ready to receive the guests. Standing in the middle of the living room, I contemplated my work with a strange calm. This would not be a warm family party. It would be a trial, a stage for the verdict. And I was both the victim, the prosecutor, and the director. All the actors were invited. The props were ready. All that was left was to wait for the show to begin, for the curtain to rise. At 6 p.m, the sky began to darken. The guests started to arrive. Our house filled with noise and commotion. Laughter, lively conversations, and the chatter of children echoed throughout the house. My mother-in-law, dressed in an elegant burgundy velvet suit and a pearl necklace, paraded around, greeting everyone, endlessly boasting about her brilliant son and their magnificent home. "Look, Auntie, my Ethan is such a star. As soon as he got promoted, he wanted to throw this party to thank his parents and the family," she said to the great-uncle, her voice full of pride. I, standing at the door, greeted each guest with a smile. I played the role of the docile daughter-in-law and attentive hostess to perfection. No one could have guessed the storm raging inside me. Ethan, impeccable in an expensive suit, stood beside me, his arm wrapped affectionately around my waist. From time to time he would lean in to whisper compliments in my ear. "You look so beautiful today, my love. Thank you for all your hard work." His performance was so perfect I almost believed it. But every time he touched me, I felt a wave of revulsion. Chloe's parents had also arrived. They were simple country folk, somewhat intimidated upon entering such a luxurious environment. I went out to greet them at the door, welcoming them effusively. "Welcome. Was it a long trip? Come in, make yourselves comfortable." Chloe's parents seemed very moved by my welcome. They didn't know they were here not as honored guests, but as key witnesses to their own daughter's shamelessness. Chloe hadn't arrived yet. Perhaps she wanted to make a late entrance to draw attention. Tristan, Ethan's cousin, was also there. He sat quietly in a corner, occasionally glancing at me, a discreet nod instead of a greeting. I knew he was ready. When all the guests were present, the party officially began. Ethan and I raised a toast together to welcome everyone. "Thank you all, aunts, uncles, cousins, for coming from far and wide to celebrate with us. Today, to mark a small achievement in my career, my wife and I wanted to host this small gathering to express our gratitude to our parents and the entire family for their constant support," Ethan said, his voice firm and confident. Everyone applauded. I, by his side, smiled as I looked at him. "Great performance, Ethan. It will be the last time you stand in this position, saying such noble words." The party proceeded in a cheerful atmosphere, at least on the surface. People ate, chatted animatedly. My mother-in-law was the happiest. She went from table to table, toasting, receiving congratulations, her face flushed with wine and vanity. She didn't know that her joy was about to vanish. Just then, Chloe appeared in a tight, white spaghetti-strap dress that highlighted her curves. Her hair, in voluminous waves, and flawless makeup, made her look incredibly beautiful and seductive. Her arrival drew all eyes. "Chloe, you came!" I exclaimed, feigning great joy. I went up to her, took her arm familiarly, and introduced her. "Everyone, this is Chloe, my neighbor and a dear, dear sister to me." I deliberately emphasized the words sister and dear. Ethan's eyes, upon seeing Chloe, couldn't hide his fascination. He quickly stood up to offer her a chair, a gallant gesture that contrasted with his usual behavior. My mother-in-law looked at her with some displeasure, but said nothing. Perhaps she thought that, after all, she was just an unimportant neighbor. The party continued. Ethan and Chloe, although seated separately, kept exchanging meaningful glances. They thought they were being discreet, but I saw them. I saw everything. I registered everything. From time to time, I would turn to talk to Chloe, asking about her work. "I heard you're going to open a boutique, right? That's great. You'll need a lot of capital. Are you managing on your own?" My question flustered her a bit. She glanced at Ethan and stammered. "Well, I have some savings and someone is helping me. That's wonderful. Whoever is so generous, you have to introduce me," I said, smiling, my tone loaded with double meaning. Ethan, on the other side, overheard the conversation and his face changed. He quickly intervened. "Let's eat. The food is getting cold." Time passed slowly. I looked at the clock. It was almost 8. Everything was going according to plan. The guests were already a little tipsy from the wine. The atmosphere was noisier. It was the perfect moment. I gave Tristan a signal. He understood, stood up silently, and went to the karaoke machine I had prepared. "To liven up the party, I'd like to sing a song for everyone," Tristan said into the microphone. Everyone applauded. But Tristan didn't sing. He connected a USB drive to the projector. "But before I sing, I want to show you a little video. These are very everyday, very real moments of my cousin Ethan and my sister-in-law Olivia's family, which I accidentally recorded." Everyone looked curiously at the large screen hung in the middle of the living room. Ethan and Chloe, too. They had no idea that the video they were about to watch would be the death sentence for their honor and their secret affair. The lights in the living room dimmed, leaving only the light from the projector. The best part of my play was about to begin. When the living room lights dimmed, all attention focused on the large screen. The once noisy atmosphere fell into a deathly silence, broken only by the soft background music Tristan had cleverly added. Ethan and Chloe also watched with curiosity. Perhaps they thought it was a montage of happy family photos, a surprise gift I had prepared. They couldn't imagine how bitter that gift would be. But the video didn't start right away. Instead, a large red text appeared on a black background, dedicated to the liars. People began to whisper, not understanding what was happening. Ethan frowned and turned to me with a questioning look. I just smiled mysteriously and gestured for him to keep watching. And then the first image appeared. It wasn't a happy picture, but a blurry photo, taken from a distance, yet clear enough to recognize two figures kissing passionately in a garden. It was the photo I had taken from the coffee shop, capturing Ethan and Chloe's moment in my own backyard. A murmur of astonishment swept through the room. Everyone started looking at Ethan and Chloe, and the curious glances turned to suspicion. Ethan froze, his face as white as a sheet. Chloe was also horrified. She quickly bowed her head, not daring to look at anyone. My mother-in-law's face grew stern. "Tristan, what is this nonsense you're playing? Turn it off right now!" But Tristan didn't turn it off. He shrugged, looking innocent. "I don't know, Auntie. I guess I grabbed the wrong USB drive." The video continued. This time, a series of much clearer images. Ethan and Chloe holding hands in a park. Ethan feeding Chloe in a fancy restaurant. And the finale, the two of them entering a hotel together. Every photo that appeared was a stab at their charade. The whispers in the room grew louder. Chloe's parents, sitting in a corner, were pale. They couldn't believe their good, obedient daughter would do such things. My father-in-law was trembling with rage, glaring at Ethan as if he wanted to devour him. But that wasn't all. The screen changed to show the $100,000 investment contract with Ethan and Chloe's signatures. Then, the home equity loan documents with my forged signature. Tristan, as the narrator, spoke with a clear, firm voice. "Dear aunts and uncles, this is proof that Ethan has not only been unfaithful, but has also defrauded his wife, forging her signature and mortgaging their home without her consent to give the money to his mistress to open a luxury boutique." At that moment, everything became crystal clear. No one could doubt it. Ethan's entire family, who moments before had been proud and happy, now sat in embarrassed silence, not knowing where to look. But while all the attention was on the screen, another tragicomedy had begun to unfold quietly. The itching from the powder began to take effect. At first, both Ethan and Chloe only felt a slight tingling in their private areas. They thought it was the wine, making them feel warm, but the sensation grew increasingly intense. It wasn't just a tingle, it was a maddening itch, as if thousands of ants were crawling on their skin. Ethan, who was sitting, paralyzed with shame, suddenly flinched. He began to shift restlessly in his chair, unnaturally opening and closing his legs as sweat beaded on his forehead. He tried to stay calm, but he couldn't. Every so often, he had to discreetly lower his hand under the table to scratch himself quickly. Chloe was even worse off. She was wearing a thin, tight dress, and the itching made it impossible for her to sit still. She kept squirming, getting up and sitting down, her beautiful face contorted with discomfort. She deliberately dropped her purse so she could bend down and subtly scratch herself. But that only made things worse. Some relatives sitting nearby began to notice their strange movements. An aunt whispered to my mother-in-law, "What's wrong with that girl, Chloe? She looks like she has ants in her pants." My mother-in-law, overwhelmed with shame at that moment, paid no attention and just brushed it off. "Leave her be." The itching became unbearable. It was like a fire burning them from the inside. Ethan could no longer maintain his composure. He began to scratch more openly, his face red and his breathing ragged. Chloe was on the verge of tears. She was scratching her thighs through the thin fabric of her dress, leaving red marks. "Excuse me. I need to use the restroom," Chloe mumbled, and practically fled the living room. Ethan, seeing her, couldn't hold on any longer either. He jumped up and said to everyone, I'm not feeling well either. Excuse me." And he quickly headed towards the bathroom. The two protagonists of the infidelity drama had temporarily left the stage, unaware that another, even more humiliating act awaited them. The living room was still in shock from the evidence. People began to criticize Ethan and pity me. My mother-in-law sat like a statue, her face drained of all color. She never imagined that in a single night, all her pride would crumble. But I knew the best was yet to come. My irritating gift was just beginning to take effect. I wondered if they would find a way to put out that fire, or if they would create an even more appalling scene together. The sudden disappearance of Ethan and Chloe made the atmosphere in the living room even stranger. After the initial shock of the evidence of infidelity, people began to whisper and comment on the inexplicable actions of the two culprits. "Looks like they broke out in a rash or something," an uncle said. "It's surely divine punishment for their sins," added the gossipy aunt, her voice gleeful. I, sitting in a corner, calmly sipped my tea, smiling to myself. Divine punishment? No, this was a punishment orchestrated by my own hand. My mother-in-law, after a moment of stupor, finally reacted. Shame quickly turned to anger. She turned to me, her eyes spitting fire. "It was you, wasn't it? You arranged all of this to humiliate my son, to destroy this family." I put down my teacup and looked her directly in the eye, my voice calm. "What are you talking about, Mom? I just showed everyone the truth. If your son did those things, why are you blaming me? You, all you." My mother-in-law choked on her rage, unable to speak. My father-in-law remained silent, his face grim. He took long drags from his cigarette. The dense white smoke enveloped the atmosphere. He was probably as angry with his son as he was embarrassed in front of the family. Just then, I decided it was time to add more fuel to the fire. I stood up and approached Chloe's parents, who were still huddled in a corner, pale with shame and pain. I placed a hand on Chloe's mother's shoulder, my voice compassionate. "Ma'am, don't be distressed. What's done is done. We must remain calm. Perhaps Chloe is young and immature. Why don't you and I go see how she is? Talk to her a bit," I said deliberately loud so everyone could hear me. Chloe's parents, though embarrassed, couldn't refuse. They just nodded, tears in their eyes. "Excuse me for a moment, aunts, uncles, cousins. I'll accompany them to see what's wrong with the kids," I said to the guests, and helped Chloe's mother to her feet. Several curious aunts also stood up to follow us. "We'll go with you. Let's see what's happening. This needs to be cleared up." My mother-in-law, seeing this, couldn't sit still. She also got up with difficulty and followed us, her face filled with fury. Thus, a procession led by me headed towards the bathroom at the end of the hall, where I knew Ethan and Chloe were. The closer we got, the more we heard strange sounds coming from inside. The sound of running water, moans, and slapping sounds. "Help me! Help me! It burns, it itches," Chloe screamed desperately. Mixed with Ethan's curses. "Damn it! What the hell is this? Why does it itch so much?" All of us outside were stunned, not understanding what was happening. Chloe's parents were even paler, probably imagining even more terrible scenes. I feigned concern and knocked on the door. "Chloe, Ethan, are you okay? Open the door." There was no response from inside, only the cries grew more desperate. "This isn't right. Something must have happened. We have to break down the door," I said in an alarmed voice. Without waiting for anyone to react, Tristan, Ethan's cousin, whom I had already instructed, lunged forward and kicked the door with all his might. Bam! The wooden door burst open. And then an incredible scene, at once tragic, comical, and humiliating, was revealed to everyone. The procession of people stood frozen, mouths agape and eyes wide. Inside the bathroom, Ethan and Chloe were in a deplorable state. They had taken off most of their clothes, barely covering themselves with the last remaining garments. Both were under the shower, cold water pouring over them, but apparently unable to calm the fire consuming them. Their skin was red and covered in rashes. They were screaming and frantically scratching all over their bodies. "Ah, I'm dying from the itch." "What is this?" Chloe cried as she scratched, her soaked hair stuck to her face, looking like a ghost. Ethan was even worse off. He was scratching and jumping like a shrimp on a hot pan. He was even using the toilet brush to scrub his back. The people watching from outside couldn't say a word. Some covered their mouths in shock, others turned away, unable to watch, and some couldn't help but let out a snicker. Chloe's parents collapsed to the floor, crying silently. They had raised and educated a daughter only to witness her today in such a disheveled, shameless, and humiliating state. My mother-in-law could only stand there, pointing at them, trembling, unable to speak, anger, shame, bewilderment, all mixed together, making her look on the verge of a collapse. And I, the director of this play, simply watched from behind, a faint smile on my lips. My irritating gift had turned out to be more effective than I imagined. It not only caused them physical pain, but it stripped them bare in the most humiliating way possible. The play was not over yet. I knew that after this shock would come an even more intense confrontation, and I had the final pieces of evidence ready to put an end to it all. The chaotic scene in the bathroom lasted for a few minutes before everyone could react. The initial snickers were replaced by whispers and increasingly loud comments. My God, unbelievable. Not only are they unfaithful, but they also put on this spectacle. Look at them. It's instant karma. Ethan's family won't know where to hide after this. These words were like needles stabbing into the pride of Ethan's family. My father-in-law, who had tried to maintain his composure, could take it no more. He roared like a wounded beast. "Get out of here, all of you! Get out!" People were startled, somewhat frightened by his fury, but no one moved. How could they miss such a good show? Ethan and Chloe, after the initial panic of being discovered, finally realized their situation. The physical pain was replaced by extreme shame. They scrambled to find clothes to cover themselves, but in their confusion, Chloe mistakenly grabbed Ethan's shirt, while Ethan struggled with Chloe's dress. The scene became even more comical and ridiculous. At that moment, I decided it was my turn. I stepped forward, my voice not loud but clear and firm, silencing all the noise. "Dear aunts and uncles, perhaps you still don't understand why Ethan and Chloe are behaving so strangely, do you?" All eyes turned to me. Ethan and Chloe also looked at me, with a mixture of hatred and fear. They probably already suspected the cause. I smiled coldly. "Let me explain. The reason is not complicated. It's simply that they've been sneaking snacks and had an allergic reaction to the fruits of their affair." I deliberately used words with double meanings, arousing people's curiosity even more. "Allergic? Allergic to what?" my mother-in-law snapped. "To itching powder." "Mom," I replied, with complete naturalness. "I've heard that certain types of powders, if they come into contact with sensitive areas of the skin, can cause an unbearable sting and itch." Seeing Ethan and Chloe's symptoms, I assumed they must have accidentally brushed up against it somewhere. My words were like a bomb. Everyone was stunned. And then, suddenly, they understood everything. They looked at Ethan and Chloe, and then at me. Their gazes shifted from astonishment to admiration. They realized that this whole play had been directed by me. Ethan, now understanding everything, glared at me, gritting his teeth. "Olivia, it was you. What did you do?" "Me? What did I do?" I laughed. "I just helped you two spice up your relationship a little. You turned my garden into your love nest, so I thought it was only fair to return the favor with a little something, don't you think, honey?" "You bitch! You wicked woman!" Ethan shouted, trying to lunge at me, but Tristan and other cousins held him back. "Calm down, cousin. You mess up and then you yell at Olivia," Tristan said ironically. He had played his part perfectly. Chloe's parents were no longer crying. They stood up and went to their daughter, who was trembling in a corner. A sharp sound echoed. Chloe's father had slapped her. "Shameless girl. Do you know what you've done? You've disgraced us in front of everyone." Chloe's mother covered her face, crying. "My God, what a disgrace. Why did I have a daughter like this?" The judgment and criticism erupted. Ethan's relatives, who had previously defended him, now turned on him. "Ethan, how could you? You've stained the honor of this family. This is unacceptable. He should be kicked out of the house." My mother-in-law, seeing her son abandoned by everyone, resorted to playing the victim. She collapsed to the floor, crying and wailing. "It's Olivia's fault." She set a trap for my son. "My son is a good boy. He wouldn't do something like this." But no one believed her act anymore. They looked at her with contempt. "You're still defending your son? Don't you see the proof of his infidelity is clear?" an aunt said. I watched everything in silence. Everything was unfolding as I had expected. But I knew this was not the end. There was one last act, the most decisive one. I had to present the final evidence so they would have no escape to put an end to this marriage forever. I took a deep breath, preparing for my final performance. Amid the chaos of tears, insults, and accusations, I knew my decisive moment had arrived. I could not let my mother-in-law's performance change the course of events. I had to deliver the final blow, one strong enough to crush any resistance, any last excuse. I stepped forward, approaching Tristan, who was still by the projector. I took the microphone, cleared my throat, and the sound that came through the speakers instantly captured everyone's attention. The once noisy room fell silent again. All eyes, from the furious and curious to the gleeful, were focused on me. Aunts, uncles, friends, I began, my voice calm and clear, without a hint of a tremor. I know that what you have just witnessed has been more than enough for one evening, but I ask for a little more of your time, because the truth is even worse than what you have seen. My mother-in-law, hearing this, jerked her head up, her bloodshot eyes fixed on me. What else are you going to make up? Isn't it enough that you've ruined my son? I didn't look at her. My eyes went straight to Ethan, who was being held by two of his cousins, his face still red from the powder and anger. Ethan, do you really think that by blaming me, or by having your mother create a drama, you're going to get away with this? You underestimated me, and you underestimated the law. I signaled to Tristan. The large screen lit up again. This time, it wasn't photos of infidelity, but images of documents, of endless figures. Dear family, I said, with a firm voice. This is the statement from a bank account opened in my name and Ethan's, which I knew nothing about. And this is the mortgage contract for our own home, with my signature blatantly forged. Ethan used that $100,000 not for the family, but to finance the opening of Miss Chloe's luxury boutique. I pointed at Chloe, who shrank like a cornered mouse. The room erupted again in a murmur of astonishment. This time, the shock was greater. Infidelity was already unacceptable, but defrauding and robbing his own wife? The gravity of the matter had completely changed. My father-in-law, who had remained like a stone statue, jumped to his feet. Trembling, he pointed at Ethan, his voice breaking. "Ethan, you. He couldn't finish the sentence. He staggered and collapsed into the chair, clutching his chest, gasping for air. The shock had been too much for him. Tristan, following the script, stepped forward. He was no longer the shy student. His voice was firm and powerful. Aunts and uncles, I'm Tristan, Ethan's cousin, and I want to be a witness. Everything Olivia has said is true. It was Ethan who asked me several times to run shady errands related to this loan. He even boasted to me that Olivia trusted him so much he could easily deceive her. I have here a photocopy of the loan application that I secretly kept." Tristan held up a folder of documents. His words were the final hammer blow that shattered any denial. Ethan completely broke down. He no longer shouted. He just stood there, head bowed, his body limp like a rag doll. He knew there was no escape. All his sins, all his dirty tricks, had been exposed in the rawest way possible. Chloe's parents lost their composure. They lunged at their daughter, pulling her hair while hitting and insulting her. "My God, daughter, how could you be so stupid?" Involved with a married man, and on top of that, defrauding his wife. "How do you expect us to live with this shame?" Chloe could only cover her head and cry without a word in her defense. I watched the chaotic scene, feeling nothing. It was the end they deserved. I took the microphone one last time, my voice echoing through the room, silencing the noise. "In-laws," I said, looking directly at the two broken figures in their chairs. "I once respected you very much. I tried to be a good daughter-in-law. But what you have done today, and what Ethan has done, has completely disappointed me. I cannot continue this marriage." I turned to Ethan, my gaze as cold as ice. "Ethan Hayes, you and I are finished. My lawyer will send you the divorce papers on Monday. You don't need to sign them. With all this evidence, the judge will decide on their own." With that said, I put the microphone down on the table. I didn't want to say anything more. Everything that needed to be said had been said, all the evidence presented. My play had come to an end. I walked over to Tristan, patted him on the shoulder. "Thank you, cousin." And I walked straight to the door, without looking back even once. I didn't need to witness their collapse. I didn't need to hear any more pleas or insults. I had done my job. I had reclaimed my justice and my honor. As I walked through the door and breathed in the cool night air, I felt as if I had been born again. A new life, a new future, awaited me. As I walked out the door, leaving behind a chaos of ruin and humiliation, I didn't go far. I went to the backyard, where it had all begun. The night was late. The garden was silent under the moonlight. The jasmine trellis still gave off its soft fragrance. The roses still silently displayed their beauty. Everything was the same, only the hearts of the people had changed. I sat on the wooden swing where I used to read, gently rocking back and forth. From the house, the echoes of arguments and insults still reached me, but they no longer seemed to affect me. I felt a strange peace, a relief as if a weight that had oppressed my heart for years had been lifted. I knew that from this moment on, my life would enter a new stage. I was no longer Olivia, the submissive wife, the resigned daughter-in-law. I was myself, a free and independent woman. A short while later, Tristan came out. He was carrying a cup of hot chamomile tea. "I figured you'd be out here," he said, handing me the cup. "Thank you," I said, accepting it. The warmth spread through my hands. "How is everything inside?" "A mess," Tristan sighed. "After you left, Ethan's parents and Chloe's parents had a huge fight. They blamed each other, insulted each other mercilessly. Chloe's parents demanded their daughter return the money, and Ethan's parents said their daughter had seduced their son. In the end, Chloe's parents dragged her away, cursing her the whole time. And Ethan? Ethan. Tristan hesitated. After everyone insulted him, he just sat in a corner, saying nothing, as if he had lost his soul. Your father-in-law seems to have suffered a serious shock. They had to help him to his room. And your mother-in-law, she's still crying, blaming everyone but her son." I nodded, not surprised. It was the end I had foreseen. A family built on lies and appearances. When stripped of its facade, all that remains is selfishness and evasion of responsibility. "And what are you going to do now?" Tristan asked, a hint of concern in his eyes. "I'm getting a divorce," I replied firmly. "I'm starting a new life. I've put up with enough." "I support you," Tristan said. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me." I smiled at him, a sincere smile. "Thank you, Tristan. You were very brave today." "It was nothing, Olivia. I just did the right thing." We sat in silence for a while, gazing at the garden under the moon. The chirping of crickets, the rustling of leaves. That peace was very precious. "Hey, Olivia," Tristan said suddenly. "In the future, don't trust anyone too much. People can be very unpredictable." I nodded. "I know. Thanks for reminding me." That conversation with Tristan that night made me realize many things. I had been too trusting. I had sacrificed too much, turning myself into a victim. But I didn't regret it. It was those falls, that pain, that forged me into the woman I am today. A stronger, more resilient version. The next morning, I packed my bags and left that house before anyone woke up. I left a signed divorce petition on the dining room table. I didn't take much, just some clothes and a few important keepsakes. The house, the car, the material things Ethan had bought with my money, I no longer needed them. I left them for him as a final act of charity. I took a cab to the airport. I didn't go to my parents' house right away. I needed some time alone, in an unfamiliar place, to sort out my thoughts. I bought a plane ticket to Santa Barbara, the beautiful coastal city I had always dreamed of visiting. Sitting on the plane, watching the white clouds pass by the window, I felt a great lightness. My 5 years of marriage had ended like this. No lengthy arguments, no tedious trials. It ended with a party, a play directed by me. Perhaps it wasn't a perfect ending, but for me, it was a liberation. When the plane landed, the bright sun and fresh sea air welcomed me. I took a deep breath, feeling the salty taste of the wind. A new life awaited me. The following days, I wandered the streets of Santa Barbara. I walked along the beach, watching the waves crash. I went up to the top of the courthouse for a panoramic view, visited its old missions. I explored the wharf, tasted the local cuisine, and made a wish for the future. I didn't try to forget the past. I learned to accept it, to see it as a part of my life, a very expensive lesson. During this time, I kept in touch with Tristan. He kept me updated on the situation back home. Ethan, after the shock, had completely spiraled. He no longer cared about his work, spending his days locked in his room drinking. The company he worked for, upon learning of the infidelity and fraud scandal, fired him. My ex-mother-in-law had become withdrawn, barely speaking, no longer the arrogant woman she once was. The ex-father-in-law became genuinely ill. Their family was paying the price for their actions. I listened to this news without glee, only with a vague sadness. Grudges pass, only human affection remains. But the affection between them and me had probably been exhausted. A month after that terrible party, I decided it was time to face reality. The vacation in Santa Barbara had helped me regain the balance and peace of mind I needed. I couldn't keep running away among the waves and white sand. I returned to the city, but not to the old house, full of painful memories. I rented a small, cozy apartment in another district, a place completely foreign to my past. I needed my own space, a completely clean start to rebuild my life. The first thing I did was look for a job. With my experience and skills, it didn't take long for me to be hired as a lead designer at a prestigious interior design firm. The new work environment, the new and dynamic colleagues, the challenging and creative projects, everything absorbed me, leaving no room to think about the past. My life gradually found a stable and peaceful rhythm. In the morning, I went to work with enthusiasm. In the afternoon, I cooked myself a delicious dinner, and on weekends, I met up with friends or went to yoga classes to relax. Little by little, I found joy in the simplest things again. I realized that a woman's happiness does not depend on a man at all. It lies in her own worth, her freedom, and her ability to be self-reliant. I had lost that, but now I had regained it, even stronger and more radiant than before. While my life was flourishing and improving, in another part of the city, a family was sinking deeper into crisis and darkness. I didn't actively seek information, but news about Ethan's family reached me from time to time through Tristan. The poor cousin, after the party, was considered a traitor by the entire family. He moved out on his own and decided to cut ties with those toxic people. He would call me occasionally to see how I was doing, and through his fragmented accounts, I could piece together the collapse of their family. That party not only destroyed their reputation among relatives, but also triggered a series of severe and irreparable financial consequences. Chloe's boutique, that project built with stolen money and sweet promises, of course, never opened. The bank, after receiving my complaint with all the evidence of the forged signature, acted immediately. They not only froze the phantom account, but also sent a notice to Ethan demanding full payment of the $100,000 loan in a very short period. Otherwise, they would initiate legal action and foreclose on the mortgage, that is, the house where we had lived. $100,000, for Ethan, at that time, was an astronomical figure. He had to hastily sell the luxury car he was so proud of, sell his brand-name watches and expensive suits he had bought with my money. But all of that was like a drop in the ocean. The pressure of the debt crushed him, transforming him from an elegant and confident man into someone constantly irritable and dejected. The house we had lived in, which held my youth and my sacrifices, was finally repossessed by the bank. From being a respected sales director, living in a luxury home, and driving an expensive car, Ethan became a man with nothing overnight, literally. He had to move back in with his parents in a small, damp, rented house in a suburban neighborhood. The shock of losing his job, his assets, and his honor completely broke him. He couldn't recover. Tristan told me he sank into alcoholism. Day after day, with no interest in work or the future. He became sullen, irritable, and prone to fights. His parents were no better. My ex-father-in-law, after the tremendous shock of the party, became seriously ill. A minor stroke made it difficult for him to walk and left one arm almost immobile. He was no longer the authoritarian patriarch of before. Now he was just a sick old man, confined to a chair, constantly sighing in his helplessness. And my ex-mother-in-law, the arrogant and haughty woman who thought she was the center of the universe, now faced the harshest of realities. Not only did she lose the pride she felt for her golden boy, but she also had to endure the criticism and rejection of all her relatives and neighbors. No one came to her house anymore to flatter her or listen to her boasting. They looked at her with contempt, considering her family a stain on the lineage. She no longer dared to leave the house, confined within 4 damp walls, her face always grim. The tragedy of their family reached its climax on a day of torrential rain. Ethan and Chloe met again by chance. Chloe, after her parents took her back to their town and disowned her, also found herself at a dead end. Criticized by the neighbors, pointed at by everyone, she couldn't stand it and returned to the city. She sought out Ethan, but not to rekindle their romance, but to demand the money she claimed he had swindled from her. Tristan was an accidental witness to that fateful encounter at a roadside bar. He told me about it, still shaken. The meeting of 2 people who were once lovers, who embraced in my garden, now turned into a fight, a sordid exchange of accusations. There were no more sweet words, only reproaches and the most venomous insults. "It's your fault. It's all your fault." "You deceived me!" Chloe screamed, tears mixing with the rain on her face. "You said you would give me a life of luxury, that you would make me a business owner. And now look at me. I've lost everything. Where's my money? Where's my store? Give it back to me." Ethan, sunk in alcohol and despair, also lost his temper. He slammed the table and shouted, "Enough! If it weren't for your demands, for your insistence, I wouldn't be like this. You're just a gold digger. Now that I have no money, you come to attack me. Yes, I'm a gold digger. But weren't you the one who seduced me with money? Now that you're broke, you blame me? You coward." The argument escalated. They brought up all the secrets, all the false promises, to hurt and humiliate each other. The love they had so proudly flaunted turned out to be a dirty exchange, based on deceit and money. When the love disappeared and the money was gone too, all that was left between them was hatred. Tristan said the argument ended in a fight. Ethan, in his drunkenness and rage, lost control. He lunged at Chloe, grabbed her by the hair, and slapped her repeatedly. Chloe didn't back down either, scratching and screaming. The chaotic scene only ended when neighbors intervened and called the police. Ethan was arrested shortly after for assault. When Tristan told me this, I didn't know what to feel. I felt no glee or joy, only a deep sadness for a wasted life. They had everything in their hands: youth, beauty, opportunities. But their own greed, falsehood, and selfishness destroyed their lives. They pushed themselves into the abyss, writing a most tragic ending for themselves. It was the punishment they had to receive, a punishment that came late but could not have been more bitter. I no longer wanted to concern myself with them. Their lives, their tragedy, no longer had any connection to me. I was busy with my new life, with my plans and projects for a brighter future. I realized that the best and sweetest revenge is not to make your enemy suffer, but to live a happy and radiant life, a life they can never attain. And I succeeded. I found my own peace and happiness, a happiness built firmly on the ashes of the past. The painful past was truly behind me, and I would never, ever look back at it again. A year later, on a beautiful weekend afternoon, I was in my small rooftop garden. After moving into the new apartment, I transformed the desolate concrete terrace into a green oasis, also with proud old rose bushes. The jasmine was beginning to climb, spreading its soft fragrance on the wind, just like in the old garden. But this garden was mine alone, a space of absolute peace. A paradise cultivated with freedom and serenity, no longer stained by any lies or painful memories. I was meticulously pruning the dead leaves from a patch of white daisies when my phone rang. It was Tristan. My cousin's voice on the other end sounded a bit hesitant, very different from his usual cheerfulness. "Olivia, are you busy?" "There's something. I don't know if I should tell you." I paused, the pruning shears almost slipping from my hand. My instinct, forged through so many storms, told me that something related to the past was about to happen. "I'm not busy. What's wrong? Tell me straight. It's about Ethan." Tristan took a deep breath. "He's out of jail. He just got my number and asked me to ask you if you could meet him for a moment." Ethan. I hadn't heard that name, or thought about it, for a year. It was like a healed scar, no longer painful, just a faint mark reminding me of a foolish time. He's out of jail already? So soon? After the assault on Chloe, he was sentenced to a year, but probably for good behavior, he was released after a few months. Why does he want to see me? I asked, my voice so calm that even I was surprised. I thought I would feel something, but no, my heart was as serene as a calm lake. I don't know. He just said he wanted to see you one last time to apologize. He was crying a lot. Olivia. He looked pitiful. Tristan's voice had a hint of compassion. I was silent for a moment. Should I see him? All debts seemed to have been settled by time and the law, but was this meeting really necessary? Wouldn't it reopen wounds I had worked so hard to close? I don't want to see him. I was about to refuse. I saw no reason to waste another minute on that person, but then Tristan said something that made me reconsider. He said if you didn't agree, he would come find you at your work or your home. I know what he's like. When he gets something in his head, I'm afraid he'll make a scene and harm you. I sighed. It was true. A leopard doesn't change its spots. Even to apologize, he wanted to do it in a forced and annoying way. He still didn't understand, or didn't want to understand, that what I needed most was peace. All right, I said after thinking about it. Tell him we'll meet at the old coffee shop, the Daily Grind, on the corner of Main Street. Tell him he has only 15 minutes, not a second more. I chose the Daily Grind, not for nostalgia, but because it was a public, busy place, safe enough that I wouldn't have to worry about out-of-control behavior. I didn't want this last meeting to turn into another loud drama. I arrived at the coffee shop a few minutes early, chose a table in a corner by the window, from where I could observe without being seen. A year without seeing him, Ethan looked like a different person. He was much thinner and tanner. The slicked-back hair of before was now a short, uneven cut, with some gray, although he was barely over 30. The elegant and confident appearance of the sales director had completely vanished, replaced by a weariness and bitterness visible in every feature. He was wearing an old shirt, the collar somewhat frayed. When he saw me, he stood up awkwardly. His eyes, which had once captivated me, were now sunken, not daring to look at me directly. "Thank you for coming," he said in a hoarse voice. "It sounds strange." I didn't reply, just nodded slightly, indicating for him to sit down. I didn't order anything. I didn't want any kind of connection, no matter how small. He sat down, lacing his hands on the table, his thin fingers squeezing each other. The silence was suffocating. He began, his voice trembling. I wanted to apologize. I remained silent, observing the man in front of me. This was the man I had loved with all my heart, with whom I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And now, sitting across from each other, he seemed like a complete stranger. I know it's too late now, but I'm truly sorry. I was wrong, Olivia. Money and appearances blinded me. I treated you terribly. I betrayed you. I did unforgivable things. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want to tell you this so my conscience can be a little clearer. He spoke in a rush, a speech he had probably prepared. I listened, but I felt nothing. His apology, though perhaps sincere, came too late, like medicine when the patient is no longer breathing. My heart had died once for him, and it could not be revived. "Are you doing okay?" I asked, a polite question to break the silence. Ethan managed a sad smile, a crooked smile, more pathetic than tears. "Okay. Look at me. Do I look okay? No job, no house, no family. Nothing. My father, after that shock. His health worsened, and he passed away 6 months ago." He bowed his head, his voice choked. "My mother is devastated, living alone in her hometown, afraid to face anyone. And Chloe, she got married and moved far away. They say she's not doing well either. The boutique was a mistake from the beginning. It didn't last and left us full of debt." He looked up, his eyes red, full of regret and remorse. If only I had known how to value what I had. If I had had the courage to defend you against my mother and my family. If I hadn't been carried away by vanity. "There are no if-onlys, Ethan," I interrupted him gently. My voice was calm, without resentment. "It's all in the past. Everyone is responsible for their choices. You chose your family, you chose appearances, you chose that path. And I chose mine. We no longer owe each other anything. I glanced at the clock. The 15 minutes are up. If your apology was just that, I have heard it. Try to live the rest of your life well. That is the best way to apologize for past mistakes. I stood up to leave. This meeting no longer had any meaning for me. Olivia, Ethan called out to me, his tone pleading. He stood up quickly. Can we still be friends? His question stopped me. Friends? After everything that had happened, he could still say those words? I turned and looked him in the eyes one last time. A look without love, without hatred, only the distance of two worlds. No, Ethan. Between us, it is better to be strangers. It will be better for both of us. Take care. With that, I turned and walked away decisively. Without looking back, I didn't want to see his disappointed face, or hear any more pleas. This brief encounter had put a complete and definitive end to my past. I left the coffee shop and took a deep breath of the fresh air. The sky, after the afternoon rain, was blue and clear. A family car pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down. Tristan smiled, a warm and reliable smile. I was worried about you going alone, so I came to pick you up. I smiled and got into the car. Thanks, cousin. Everything okay? Yes. Everything is truly over. The car started moving, merging into the busy traffic. I looked out the window one last time. Ethan's figure was still sitting alone in the coffee shop, lonely, small, and lost in the world. I looked away. The past was truly behind me. Ahead of me was a vast sky, a bright future waiting. I was ready to start a new chapter of my life, a chapter filled with the joy, happiness, and peace that I deserved. Dear friends, Olivia's story has finally come to an end. A long journey filled with tears, humiliation, and a fierce determination to the very end. We have accompanied her through her darkest days of resignation. We have followed with bated breath every step of her revenge plan, and we have burst with satisfaction when the guilty paid a heavy price. But once the noise has settled, once the satisfaction has passed, what remains with us? Not just a thrilling story, but also profound lessons, human values that each of us, especially women, can reflect on and apply in our own lives. The first and perhaps most important lesson is about the thin line between sacrifice and blind submission. In marriage, sacrifice is a virtue. For a woman to step back to be the pillar for her husband and children is something admirable. But sacrifice only has value when it is made in the right place, when it is met with respect and gratitude. When your sacrifice is taken for granted, when your kindness is abused and your silence becomes an excuse for bad behavior, it is no longer sacrifice. It is the self-destruction of your own worth. Never allow anyone to turn your sacrifice into an obligation, and never allow anyone to trample on your dignity just because you love them. The price of silence is sometimes higher than that of speaking up. Learn to set boundaries, not to create distance, but to protect your soul and your own value. The second thing Olivia's story teaches us is the power of independence. Independence not only financially, but also emotionally and intellectually. By giving up her career and depending completely on Ethan, Olivia initially found herself in a passive position of resignation and suffering. But when she decided to stand up, it was her latent talent and the relationships she had previously built that were the ultimate weapons that helped her turn the situation around. Financial independence is not to compete with men, but to have the power to choose, to have a voice, and to have a way out when the storm comes. It is the strongest shield that protects a woman from injustice, and no less important is emotional independence. Never let your happiness depend entirely on a man. Create your own joy through your work, your friends, your hobbies. When you can be happy by yourself, you will no longer fear anyone's abandonment or betrayal. And finally, the lesson about forgiveness and liberation. Many of us, while following the story, felt very satisfied with the tragic end of Ethan and his family. That feeling is natural. It is the desire for justice. But have you noticed? Olivia's true peace did not come when her revenge succeeded, but a year later, when she was in her own garden, living a free and happy life. The sweetest revenge is not to see your enemy fall, but to see yourself standing, happy and on your own 2 feet, to live a life so radiant that they can never attain it. The final meeting with Ethan and her calm refusal demonstrate Olivia's immense maturity. She no longer felt resentment, because holding a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. To forgive is not because they deserve it, but because our own soul deserves to be at peace. To release them is also to release ourselves from the chains of the past. And, dear friends, the story we have just followed, despite its dramatic twists, is ultimately a story created with the purpose of conveying educational messages and meaningful lessons. All characters and events in the story are fictional. We hope that through Olivia's story, each of us has learned something to live a stronger, more autonomous, and happier life. If this story has touched your heart, or if you have reflections or lessons you would like to share, please leave a comment below.